Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? See a couple smiles. We're just about ready. There were a couple other folks joining. I'm going to give this just a couple more minutes as folks are getting logged in. I think we're going to go ahead and start. This will be recorded and we will put it on our YouTube channel. So if anybody wants a refresher or the folks who joined late, they'll be able to look at this. So thank you very much. It's been a while since we've done a grant webinar. And I'll share my screen here in just a minute. So just to make sure everybody is in the right place, this is the boating facility and waterway access and small grant program. So we're going to be talking about motorized and non-motorized recreational access. So the capital improvements and the related services that go into development of physical access sites. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, hopefully everybody can see it. So just to let you know, I can't see you or whether you have your hands up. So feel free to unmute and then mute again as we go forward with this. So our focus for this will be about construction, permitting, and property acquisition for recreational boating access, both motorized and non-motorized. So that includes renovation, replacement, or development of new boat ramps, docks, parking, sanitation, piling, gangways, debris deflection boom, anything that makes it necessary for a boater to use the site. So who can apply? We've pretty much have all governmental entities. Tribal governments at this time are only eligible to apply for non-motorized access. Private marinas are eligible to apply only for marine sewage pump outs, dump stations, and floating restrooms. And then non-governmental organizations can apply to do life jacket kiosks, boating safety signage, informational signage for boaters, with the permission of a landowner for them to install those on those sites. But I also want to put a big plug. Non-governmental organizations, whether or not they're nonprofits, they're schools, they're businesses, they're great advocates for improvements. They can help champion them through your processes. I've had groups show up and support park budgets to help make these physical improvements, as well as a lot of times they're your users. They have great insight and can help provide some valuable information as you're looking to make improvements. So technical assistance, the Marine Board has the capacity to provide technical assistance free. We can come and do site assessments and feasibility to give you an idea whether a piece of property is worth developing or pursuing. We can also look at damage and give you some recommendations on how to either repair it or ways to approach resolving the issue that's happening on site. We have the capacity to do both topographic and bathymetric survey, so both the upland and the water portion. And we can also provide design and engineering. We have one registered civil engineer, and we currently have 4 designers who work on access points throughout the state. And just to kind of give a perspective, there's approximately 1,500 publicly accessible water access sites in the state. So you can imagine with 1 engineer and 4 designers, we are extremely busy with these requests. And then permitting. The permitting process to do things in a water facility is very complex. It is the nexus for the most sensitive areas for archaeological resources, for endangered species, environmental sensitivity. So the process is very complex and can take quite a while. I am actually going to be interviewing to fill that position this week, so I'm excited to hopefully have a full staff very soon. And then project planning. So we can assist by either serving on as a participant to your process. We can also be a technical resource outside of your process for planning. We can provide some funding to help with master planning of a site. That gets a little complex if the site is beyond a boating access. So if you have a large day use park that has a playground and picnic areas and a dog park and playground equipment or basketball courts, the amount to assign associated with recreational boating can get a little bit complex and takes a lot of discussion. We will also take your planning processes as a form of match on a prorated basis. And then we also are a resource. We receive several emails and phone calls asking about, do we know of contractors in the area that are capable of doing a certain type of work? What kind of material, or where do we find this product, this material that you're trying to locate? So we provide a lot of things on behalf of the boaters to help remove some barriers. You really have to be very passionate and a strong advocate for boating access, because it does take a lot of time and dedication to get through that process. So, and then of course, the grant funding piece. To build these facilities, it takes a lot of partnerships and funding. And we've had partners with a variety of different state and federal agencies, as well as local businesses and individuals, uh, to help put together an entire package for development. So what does match look like? So we're looking for a minimum of 25%. The more match, the more points you earn through the evaluation process. But examples of cash. Um, it's not unusual to have an applicant bring in other grant sources, whether it's a recreational trails grant from state parks or land and water conservation. There's also local grants. Tillamook County has a a transient lodging tax. There's economic development in a lot of counties or cities that have a source of funds. Sometimes urban renewal districts, system development charges are other sources of funding that can be applied. Then we have all the different federal ones. There's also U.S. economic development. If you are thinking about a water trail, National Park Service has a fantastic grant to provide some planning assistance. And then all of the different locals. So we've been very fortunate that applicants have been able to secure funds from boating clubs, fishing organizations, local businesses. There was even a Harley club that donated money to a site. Folks have been very creative. They've done community garage sales, salmon bakes, GoFundMe accounts to help a landowner secure resources to be competitive in the grant process. And then labor. So labor can be your staff time to remove and demo existing docks that need to be taken care of. It could be working with the local school to do some restoration plantings. It can be utilizing 4-H club who had a strong interest, and they decided to make it a school project to come out and do things. So labor can be anything that is a direct value to the project and necessary, or something that a contractor would have been hired for. And it's very similar to what materials are. If the materials are necessary to the overall project, they're definitely a match. We've got match from rock. Somebody had wheel stops, fencing materials. Plants. Sometimes local nurseries will donate some plants for beautification and mitigation of a site. And then equipment. When your staff are driving their equipment out on site, whether it's the truck to get them back and forth to inspect during construction, to the backhoe, grader, a striping machine, any of those things are great match, as well as the administration, the overall management of the grant. So timeline, we are currently accepting our cycle 1 applications. That's basically a month out from today. This is where we give away the bulk of our funding. So about 70 to 75% of our available funds will be awarded by the board on the June meeting. Now, there is quite a bit of time between when the applications are, the deadline is, and when the board considers it. And that's because we have a 30-day public comment period. We review the applications. Once we've accepted them, they get posted online. and we encourage the public to provide comments. We also let you know so that you can share it through your website, listservs, interested parties, and let them know that there's an opportunity for them to also comment on the application. This has been a very positive aspect of our grant review process. The comments from the public have been, I'd say, probably 99% very thoughtful and articulate and added value to the whole review process. And then we have internal staff review. So the facilities program reviews the application and ranks them for their areas of expertise. And then our boating safety program does the same thing. They look at it from a safety aspect. They also review to see if there's use of any conflict potential rulemaking, as well as our policy and environmental program does the same. So they look at it for agency and waterway rules. They're looking at it for abandoned derelict vessel issues and for the Clean Marina program as well. So it's a pretty robust process. Once the evaluations are done, then my program puts together our staff recommendations that will go to the board, because this will be a very large grant process. We try to get the applications to the board at least a month ahead of time so they have a chance to read. Some applications will be a couple hundred pages and some, 25 pages. But it's a lot for them to read, and they do read it. We also want to give them an opportunity to ask any questions so that we can get clarification from the applicants. And then they will also get the staff recommendations. So what are the limitations? And I will say the biggest one is this is for recreational boating access for both motorized and non-motorized boats. The funding that we receive come from those users, and so we want to protect and be a good steward of the funds. All work has to be completed by the end of our biennium. So we're talking right now about the 2023 to 25 budget. So all work has to be completed by the June 30, 2025 deadline. Now, if your project total is under 50,000, you might want to consider our small grant program. It has a little more flexibility in the timing, and I'll talk about the details on that program later. There is no maximum amount that you can apply for. We are, of course, limited by the amount of funds we have available, but you could ask for $1 million, or you can ask for $55,000. Projects can be phased. So with our budget limitations, your budget limitations, perhaps even the permitting, the special in-water construction windows, it may make sense for you to phase a project. And so you might apply for the restroom. There's a lot of strategy with this. You could apply for the restroom, show the public that something is happening while you're going through a 2 to 3 year or more permitting process for the water portion. We've also had projects where you're buying materials in anticipation for construction. So folks will apply for the docks, and I'm sure all of you have experienced the extended lead times on materials. Sometimes it is a very good strategy to obtain the materials, have them in hand, so that when you have a contractor on board, he can actually utilize that in-water window and not have to wait for materials to arrive, hopefully in time to utilize that water window. And then, as I mentioned, there is this public review process, and we encourage you to help spread the word and give people an opportunity. The public is always interested on where their funds are going. And then we also do tribal consultation. It doesn't mean you shouldn't. In fact, I would strongly encourage you to consult with your respective Oregon tribal nations. We've had some projects that have not gone forth with funding because there was no tribal consultation completed on a local level, and the tribal nations required a archaeological survey, and that slowed everything down. So we do consult with them, and we take their comments very seriously into our process. And then these grants are also approved by our board. The board has the complete authority to approve, defer, or deny an application. Staff does make a recommendation for one of those actions, and the board may or may not agree with it or may modify what staff is recommending. And then specialty reports. The majority of our projects that we fund have specialty reports. Archaeological, it used to be where you would think about this for ground disturbing activities, not a surprise, but we're also seeing a growing request to have surveys for the submerged land, so some underwater surveys. That is fairly expensive, but if you think about a lot of our waterways, especially if you're in a reservoir or lake, some of those areas were previously not submerged and have a likelihood of having sensitive areas. And then hydraulic. So once we start getting into the water, a hydraulic analysis is almost always completed if we are doing any deviation. If you are only replacing docks, so no piling work, no abutment work, same footprint, a hydraulic analysis generally isn't needed. But if you were going to be doing a ground disturbing activity, one of those is generally needed because it's also going to be required to get through your floodplain development permits for a balanced cut and fill. But we also want whatever improvement to last for the term of the grant agreement, which is generally 25 to 30 years. Mother Nature likes to move the water around, and we want to make sure whatever is out there has the highest likelihood of staying there rather than having the river continually try to remove it. And then environmental, wetland delineations, jurisdictional determination on where the high water line is, and then the mitigation aspect. So mitigation has really amplified a lot. It used to be where we would do some large woody debris, riparian plantings, and this has expanded where a lot of mitigation is now happening off-site, and that requires some additional work associated with it. And then permitting. So permitting is a big driver. These agencies are the typical ones that will issue a permit. I would say the Corps, Department of State Lands, Environmental Quality, and then your local planning are the biggest ones, or I guess most frequent. Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, if you are going to use a cofferdam or your method of construction can entrap fish, you have to go through and obtain another permit from them. And then if you are in the coastal zone management area, there's also clearance with DLCD. And if you have a new access site, you got to have a driveway, and ODOT will be the permitting agency for those. Now, on top of all of this, there's 14 to 21 different state, federal, local consultations. So with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they're going to be looking at your applications for endangered species. They'll also be looking at Section 10, the Harbors Act, Section 404. They also have jurisdiction for levees and dikes, and in some capacities, recreational navigation. And then Department of State Lands has requirements to consult with ODF&W, and they will be doing permits for fill removal and wetlands. And DEQ has the 401 water quality certification. They took that from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and they also have the 1200C permits. And then your local level permitting, we also see permits and consultations with the State Historic Preservation Office. And then there'll be things for the National Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, National Historic Preservation Act. So it's a lengthy process. Not all of it runs concurrently. Some of it is you must go through a certain process. Everything else stops until that piece is completed. So a good example of that is the Corps is required to consult with National Marine Fisheries, and no other consultation really happens until that, because that consultation process can often change the application, and then you're not having to go back through and reconsult with all the different parties. So timelines, existing docks, no piling, no abutment work, same footprint. So the docks are exactly the same width, length. That's pretty straightforward. You can get your clearances done in 6 to 12 months, sometimes shorter. If you're replacing a boat ramp, it's a little bit longer, a little more hoop to jump through. So you're looking at a 24 to 36-month process. Now, if you want to do new or expanded docks, that can be longer because now it's a ground disturbing activity. You generally have piling as well as overwater structures are a big concern for Endangered Species Act as well as for um, critical habitat. So those can take longer. Restrooms, it really depends on whether or not you can get your restroom in an area that's above the 100-year flood elevation. And that sometimes can be very challenging, especially to maintain an accessible route between the boat ramp, the parking, and the sanitation. So it can take a couple months to go through and get all your clearances. And then a new access site. So if you have something that has never been there before and you want to do it, you're looking at 4 to 8 years. It can be longer. We've recently had a project that took almost 12 years, and that had some special environmental hurdles that had to be gone through. The same time frame would be as if you're going to do a significant renovation. So if you're going to relocate, realign your boat ramp, um, add additional docks or floating structure like a wave attenuation, a debris boom, you're looking at a much longer time frame. So the grant evaluation process. So it's a fairly lengthy process, I had mentioned before. It's about 550 points. And I want to draw attention to a couple pieces. So within the project need, we do ask we have some criteria looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, environmental justice, to make sure that any funds that we're going to put out there have been thoughtful in the location, the manner of construction, the materials being used to be inviting and complementary in those locations. And then the design, permitting, and suitability. This is the largest point values section, and it really is because the permitting process takes such a lengthy time. The design is also in there, and the suitability. Because we have limited funds, we want to make sure that if we're recommending for the board to approve a project, that we have a high level of confidence that that project can be completed by the June 30th, 2025 deadline. So the status of your permits, the design, and the site suitability are heavy factors in whether or not funding is recommended or deferred for a later time until there's further progress on the permits. Because of our biennium, with it starting July 1st of the first odd year and running to June 30th of the second odd year, there's really only one chance to utilize a summer in-water construction window. So your permits have to be really close to being completely issued and approved for us to have a high level of confidence that that project can succeed. If you think about the time it takes you to go out to bid, hire a contractor, get materials, you got to really front end that project before they can even touch that in-water window. So it's important to think about the timing and feasibility of when all of those pieces can align so you can successfully complete a project. We want you to be successful. We want boaters to come and enjoy it and everybody to be happy. And we need to make sure we're not putting money in place that can't be completed within our funding cycle, because there's probably somebody else who could have utilized those funds. Um, Funding. This is a big one. We are oversubscribed. Not a surprise. Um, for our motorized funds, the boating facility funds, we do have another almost $500,000 of federal funds, but that is very restricted to pump outs, dump stations, floating restrooms, and for docking structures for transient boats. So boats that cruise from one point to another point, so a destination to destination. And those boats need to be 26 feet in length and larger. So it's primarily the coast, the Columbia, and a portion of the Willamette that has those boats on it. Because of the restricted nature, I did not include them. So these right here are state funds. It's pretty tight. And I will say with the waterway access, so our non-motorized funding, that is the amount of money for both construction as well as the outreach and education component that is eligible for non-governmental organizations. And then forms. So if you're looking where our forms are, procedure guides, they're on our website. But I wanted to draw attention because previously we had one application for both construction and the education component. This time we've separated them to make it simplified and the application shorter. So when you're grabbing an application, make sure you grab the right one, the one either for construction and permitting, or if you're applying for education and outreach. And then our small grant application is also on there. The billing and reimbursement form, the layout of it follows the budget in the application. And that's by purpose to make it easier for you to complete that, submit it so we can reimburse you for your expenses. So now I'm going to jump to small grants. Is there any questions about our boating facility and waterway access program? And once again, I can't see you, so either unmute and speak up or put something in the chat.
Hi, I'm Lacey Tolles from Port of Columbia County. I had a quick question in terms of the purchasing construction materials for a project.
Yes.
How does that work within the time frame of meeting the deadline of June 30th, 2025? If you're just purchasing to then, how do you negotiate that with timeline and purchasing materials?
Yeah, so if the board approves a grant to purchase materials, um, if you applied for our cycle one, you would essentially have 2 years to have the drawings, technical specifications, so you could go out to bid or get quotes for the materials, and you would have to take possession of them.
Okay.
So the materials would need to be delivered. You'd have to have the capacity to store them. If you don't have the capacity to store them and you're going to have them stored off-site, it needs to be in a secured place. The storage fee can be matched to either the construction phase or even for the materials purchase part.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and
There
Oh.
is one in the chat. It says, can you touch on what an education and outreach project looks like? Not clear on what is expected for those specific applications.
Okay. So at 1 o'clock, we're going to get into education and outreach in a detailed process at 1 o'clock. But on a high level, education and outreach is for non-motorized boating benefits. So I'll give you a couple examples. We have funded adaptive equipment to help get paddlers out into the water. So some adaptive oars, some pontoons, some seating mechanisms to help improve accessibility for paddlers. We have funded some kayaks, life jackets, and paddles to help a Southern Oregon organization do outdoor school for youth. We have funded Spanish language videos to help inform people. It's pretty diverse. It's trying to provide an enhanced opportunity to get underserved communities out on the water to experience non-motorized boating, whether it's rafting, kayaking, canoeing, trying out SUPs. It's really trying to provide that opportunity for them to safely explore non-motorized boating. It also is the education, hosting a training, teaching, having a clinic where you can show people how to successfully do rollover, self-righting if they go under or flip over their kayak. It can be a clinic simply showing people how to fit themselves with a paddle, a life jacket, and a boat for their skill level. It's pretty diverse with the focus on non-motorized boating and working with underserved communities. We're currently talking to a couple boating clubs who are interested in having members become American Canoe Association certified. And in return for helping them achieve that, they're going to do some safety events to help new to boating folks or people who want to have an experience but not really sure how to start or whether or not it is safe to go onto a water body, to kind of teach them things they need to know, how to read the water, what some of the boating rules are for safety. So I hope that helps. If not, we can have a discussion after the meeting, or if you can join the 1 o'clock ones, we can talk about it in more depth. Is there any others? Okay. So small grants has both motorized and non-motorized funding into that program. So we don't have an application deadline. We take these applications on a first come, first served basis as long as funding is available. It has to benefit recreational boating. So when we say recreational boating, it's not commercial. We can't fund tour boat docks or doing a parking area that has a espresso stand in it. It really needs to be focused on boating for those accesses. And once again, the work has to be completed by June 30th of 25. Projects can't be phased to fit within the funding limitation with the exception of permitting. So the small grants have helped with archaeological surveys, wetland delineations, as well as they have funded vault toilets when that was the only improvement that needed to happen on a site. They've done a full waypoint finding signage replacement, damaged utility lines, replacement of a lift station. So kind of give you an idea of what those are. The project total cannot exceed $50,000 and the Marine Board's contribution cannot be more than $30,000. There is a required 25% match. The types of match are the same from our boating facility waterway access program. There is a public comment process, but it is an expedited one. Essentially, it's a week. And we do consult with the tribe for ground disturbing activities if the application is to complete an archaeological survey or a wetland delineation or hydraulic analysis. We let the tribes know so that they're aware there's going to be a future improvement. And this is the other difference is these grants, our director has the authority to approve, defer, or deny. So the timeline for our competitive, our very large program is about 6 months from when we start applications to where the board approves them. This can happen in about 2 weeks, and that includes the 1-week public comment process. So it's a much faster, it's expedited, the application is shorter. This is just, it's really what it is. It's for these small projects to help get them going. I do want to put a plug that if you have a project that can be completed by June 30th of 23, I do have some funding still available. So if you're interested, let us know or fill out the application and submit it in, and we'll see if we can help out with that. And then this is for the 23-25 biennium. We have about 240,000 of motorized that's estimated and about 120 of our non-motorized funding sources that are going into the small grant program. So it was based on a $30,000 maximum grant. Now, I will say very few of our applications are for the full amount. Seems like the common or the most frequent dollar value of the project is between $20,000 and $25,000. So this money seems kind of small, but it actually goes fairly far. And then I will put the plug. So we do have the 3 grant cycles. Cycle 3 does not always happen. It is really dependent on whether or not there are significant cost increases on already funded projects or there are emergencies. So a good example of emergencies, in December, we had the high water event in King Tides that actually caused a lot of damage up and down the coast. So we've been using funding to help get sites repaired and functioning back open to the boating public. When that happens, we may or may not do a cycle 3. You'll also notice, if you're familiar with our programs, we have backed the timeline up for cycle 3 to where it's happening in October rather than January of, well, in this case, it would be January of 23, because there's just not enough time to go through your procurement process and have materials to complete things within basically 4 months. So we've backed it up to let a cycle 3 be a 9-month process. If we do cycle 3 and all the funds are not obligated, we roll it into the small grant program and we'll do a push to have people apply for any other funds in there. So that's my information. I'm going to go ahead and exit out. Got to get everything recentered. So questions or ideas, if it's not something you want to share, drop me an email. We're in kind of a unique position. We don't own or operate any boating access. We are completely reliant upon people like yourselves to make those improvements. to see value in having boating access and serving your communities. And we want you to be successful. We want to be good stewards of the funds the boaters have entrusted with us. So if you're not sure or you don't know where to begin, give us a call, drop me an email, and we can talk about it. A lot of boating improvements start out with, hey, I've got a call and so said there's a big hole at the boat ramp. What do I do? Or, hey, we were just out there cleaning up some sediment that came in from the storm and noticed that the bottom of the dock has fallen apart. What do we do? Those are frequent things. Don't feel odd about calling and saying, what do I do? We want to help. We're a resource to help give you some guidance on things. We also want to make sure expectations are clear that a little repair may still take some permitting time. A big project is going to take some additional time. And if you're ready to go through that process, we're going to go through it with you and try to help remove as many barriers as we can, which is why we have a permitting specialist to kind of navigate through that complex process. And we have engineering staff too. So any questions? If not, I'm going to give you 15 minutes back in your day. I thank everybody a lot for attending. And like I said, if you get away from this and you're like, hey, was this or what was that? Or is this eligible? Let us know. Like I said, we're here to help you go through this. And I'll use a pun. We're here to help you navigate this. We want you to go do boating. So thank you very much and have a great day.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
Is that PowerPoint available for download? Like they get a copy of it?
We can put it onto our website. I can work with Ashley to have it available on our website under the facilities. And then we will also have this recording available on our YouTube.
Great, thank you very much.
Oh, you are very welcome. Okay. Have a great day and thank you so much.
Thank you, Janine.